Welcome to my video on the best Terastal type for every electric type Pokemon, where I am going to go through the pure electric type and all of the dual electric typings in the whole video to talk about the best Terastal, in my opinion, of each of those typings. Now, with this project, it has taken me a very long time. It's taken me like 50 plus hours working on this project alone, and I really would appreciate it. It would mean the world to me if you could subscribe or comment or interact with this video in some way. I really would appreciate it, just to the sheer amount of time and effort it has taken for this video. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Just some clarification about this video. First of all, this is not an exhaustive list of every single Terastal that would work well with that typing. It's just ones that, in my opinion, would work best for those specific typings. Also, this does not factor in abilities, so in the trailer we saw that Colossal turned to a water-type Terastal and had its steam engine activated. Now, in some cases, there are going to be abilities that are going to allow for this to be able to take place effectively, and it's going to allow for abilities to be used with regards to the Terastal combination. And when I've talked about their typings here, I have not considered abilities. I will talk about that separately when I do the competitive guide videos in the future. Also, some Pokemon may be suitable to use specific Terastal based on powerful moves that they have. So, for example, if a Pokemon has a ground type move such as Earthquake, which is more powerful than Terra Blast, then they could definitely turn to that Terastal to get that stab, to be able to allow that to do more damage. So in some cases where Pokemon have got powerful moves or a wide move pool, they may be suitable to use more variety of Terastal, but again, I have not factored that in with this one, just on the specific typings as a generalization. Here we have the pure electric type. Now, with the pure electric type, they only have one weaknesses, and that's ground type. So we have the grass, water, and ice. You can use any of these Terastals because they're all super effective against against ground types. You may want to run grass type because grass type does resist the ground type as well, so that's an opportunity to run. Notable Pokemon, you've got Xurkitree, Regieleki, and Zeraora, but there are plenty more electric type Pokemon that can be run. Next up, we have the normal and electric typing. So the only Pokemon we've got here is Heliolisk. The typings that I would suggest for Terastal would be the flying type. That would cover any fighting type weakness. Obviously, you're going to have fighting types come in because of the normal aspect. And flying, you could also use psychic or fairy here as well. Any of them would work, but I've just decided to put flying. Water, because you are likely to have a ground type Pokemon come in, and the water Terastal would mean that you are able to get rid of that ground type Pokemon a lot easier. Would have that super effective typing. And then also bug to resist any of the ground type attacks that are going to hit you, and also bug can be used on a couple of other different Pokemon, such as things like psychic and also dark type Pokemon, which might come in. Obviously not looking for the super effective aspect, but looking more of a defensive aspect of what Pokemon might come in. Next up, we have the bug electric type. Now, the only weaknesses really you have from the bug electric type are the rock and the fire type Pokemon. Now, ground and water are both super effective against both rock and fire types, so they are perfect Terastals for both of these Pokemon, as well as being able to resist certain different moves. The water type obviously will be able to resist the fire type, and the ground type will resist the rock type. Now, the notable Pokemon we've got here are Galvantula and Vibrava, and they both work quite well against this. Remember, none of them have immunities to either the rock or the fire type, so you have to work your way around that by using the Terastal. Next up, we've got the Dark and Electric type. Now, the only notable Pokemon we have here is Morpeko. Now, I thought Morpeko wasn't the only one. I personally thought there were more, but that is the only one that is the case here. Now, suggested Terastal, you have got two main weaknesses here. You have got the ground type, you have got the fighter type, you've also got the fairy type as well. So what I would definitely recommend is a grass or water type for that ground typing. Ground type is very common, so grass and water cover that really well. Flying type covers both the bug and the fighting weakness, and you may want to put something like poison in there, or steel to allow to cover for fairy typing. But bear in mind that people are likely to bring in a ground type Pokemon against this, which both poison and steel are not very good against, so do be cautious with that, and bear in mind that all three of these Terastals have neutral damage from fairy type, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if a fairy type Pokemon came in, but I think with Steel and Poison there is that big risk of them still bringing in a ground type and hitting you really hard with that attack. The next typing we have is the Electric Dragon typing. So in this, the only Pokemon that actually holds this typing currently is Dracozolt. It's a fantastic Pokemon if you haven't used it, but there are 3 suggested Terastal I have, possibly one more as well. So you've got the water type here and the grass type, and this is mostly to cover your ground type weakness. Now, a ground type Pokemon likely going to come in and hit you very, very hard here. You've got the opportunity of a fairy type Pokemon coming in, but the risk of you going to a poison or steel Terastal to do with the fairy is the fact that you have got this massive ground weakness. So do be very cautious if you're going to try and run a poison or a steel type on this, because the ground types will probably come in for that electric typing regardless. So water or grass type obviously super effective against the ground type. Fairy super effective if another dragon type comes in on against this, but you do have to be very cautious about dealing with the fairy type because they do have the impacts with the ground type there. I'd say you're probably best to switch in that case. You possibly could even go for a flying type Terastal. That would potentially work better to work against the ground type there as well. Next up we have the electric and fairy type. The 2 Pokemon that are relevant here are Dedenne and also Tapu Koko. So with this, your main weaknesses are going to be steel, they are going to be poison, and they are going to be ground. So with the steel and poison, you have got the ground type, which will then get rid of both of those. So having a ground type Terastal will be absolutely fantastic. In terms of the ground type, you have got water or ice or possibly even grass to use as a Terastal because it's super effective against all 3 of those. So I would say ground, grass, water or ice, any of those are going to be really, really good to use on these types of Pokemon. Next up we have got the electric fighting type. Now currently there are no electric fighting type Pokemon, but in the long term hopefully there will be some that do appear. Now in terms of your fighting weaknesses, you haven't got the flying type weakness, but you have got the fairy and the psychic type weakness, which is why I would definitely suggest having the steel type on here to allow you to hit the fairy type super effective damage and also resist the psychic type. But do bear in mind that a ground type could definitely come in for the electric typing here, so that is a possibility of being a danger. Now in terms of covering the ground typing, you have got grass, water or ice, so you can use any 3 of those. Bear in mind that fighting type moves are very common. You're unlikely to have a flying type come in, so grass realistically should be pretty safe, and again electric type probably unlikely to come in, so water would be pretty safe as well. So steel is the only one that's slightly unsafe there, but it does have pretty decent coverage in terms of your weaknesses. Here we have the electric and fire type Pokemon. So the only one we have currently is Rotom Heat. We could see another one in the future. Obviously Rotom Heat does have Levitate, so it does get rid of its ground weakness, but I do need to talk about other Pokemon because potentially in the future we might have one that doesn't have Levitate. So main weaknesses for electric fire type Pokemon, you've got 4 times weakness to ground, hence why you want to run grass or water, possibly even flying to get the immunity, but grass and water are super effective, as well as ice, against the ground type attacks. Then you have got the water type that definitely can be run, so grass type doubles up very nicely against that, and also rock type, which you are weak to, which again the water and the grass do double up quite nicely. So I would say water and grass are probably going to be your best ones there, with ice being kind of okay, but not the absolute best. Definitely you want a grass or a water type coverage in that case. Here we have the electric and flying types. There are 2 reps for this in Zapdos and Thundurus. They are both absolutely fantastic Pokemon to use, so I definitely would recommend you try them out. But with this Pokemon, you have got 2 weaknesses. You've got Ice type and you have got Rock type. Now, both of those are covered super effectively by Fighting types and also Steel types. So Fighting and Steel are absolutely perfect Terastals to use in this case. You have got Water. It is super effective against the Rock type, and it also resists the Ice type, so that can be beneficial as well, but I think Fighting and Steel are just ever so slightly better, unless you're looking at purely a defensive way, and then Water might be a slightly better case to use. So next up we have got our Pokemon typing of Electric and Ghost. Now the only Electric Ghost Pokemon we have currently is Rotom. Bear in mind this does have Levitate, so it doesn't have the ground weakness, but at the same time there could be Pokemon that do get revealed that are an Electric Ghost type, so I do want to cover alternatives as well. So your main weakness here is obviously going to be your ground typing. Your ground typing is the big, huge weakness in this aspect. So you've got the water, ice, and grass typing as a Terastal for coverage of that in any way, as covered with the other electric types. Now, with regards to the ghost typing, you could have a ghost type Pokemon that comes in, so you could have the Dark Terastal to be super effective against that, and also possibly Psychic type Pokemon that could be randomly appearing. Also, you have got the aspect of running a Fairy type to cover, a Fairy type Terastal to cover the Dark type weakness as well. So that is potentially another option that you could potentially run with these other Terastals. So any of those 5 that I've spoken about could work for this. Next up, we have the Electric Grass type. So there are 2 Electric Grass type Pokemon. There are Rotom Mow and also Hisuian Electrode. Now with this typing, there are 3 main weaknesses. You have got the Ice type weakness, you have got a Bug type weakness, and you've also got a Fire type weakness. Now covering Fire type, because that is the most likely one that is going to be shown, you have got Ground and Water type there, so that will cover any of your Fire type weakness that you need to see. Also, the Water will be resistant to the Ice typing as well, so that's definitely an option for you to run there. In terms of the Bug typing, I've given it a Flying Terastal as well, because that could cover one of its potential weaknesses. You could potentially even have a Fire type Terastal to cover on the Ice type and the Bug type. That definitely would work alongside these as well, depending on what you personally want to run within your... Next up, we have got the Electric Ground typing. So the only Pokemon that applies to this is Stunfisk, and the Electric Ground typing, it is an interesting one. So your main weakness obviously here is, again, your ground typing. So you've got your Grass and your Water Terastal, even your Ice Terastal to work in front of that, but you have got the ground type weakness. Now, ground types are weak to water types, but water types are very unlikely to come in due to your electric typing. So what I would recommend in this case is maintaining with a Grass Terastal type, because it would have the super effective against the water type that does come in. It would also resist any grass types that come in to take out the ground. Now you could also go for a Flying type, which would give you an immunity to the ground and would also be super effective against the grass type that would be likely to come in to hit against your ground typing. So you've got 3 options there. The 2 best options I would say are Grass or Flying in this scenario, but Water definitely is a really good option. Next up, we have the Electric Ice Pokemon. Now there are 2 Pokemon in here. There's Arctozolt and there is also Rotom Frost. So these typings are potentially going to be very interesting. You've got ground type weakness, you've got fighting type weakness, and you've got a fire type weakness. So with regards to covering the ground and the fire type weakness, water definitely works really, really well. It allows you to get rid of the fire type and also the ground type. Now grass also works for getting rid of the ground type, but it does not work very well against the fire type, so that's one you do need to be cautious about using. And then the ground typing as well could cover the fire type that might be potentially coming in. It could also hit other Pokemon that come in, so the neutral for fighting types as well. You could possibly even run a Flying Terastal if you wanted to, but I definitely think that water in this case would probably be the top, and then grass and ground would definitely work in other situations. Next up, we have got the Electric Poison typing, and the only Pokemon that applies this to is Toxtricity currently, but there could be more in the future. Now this typing, the big standout is obviously the ground type weakness. You are 4 times weak to ground, so turning to grass, water or ice to cover that weakness would most definitely work best. In fact, I'd recommend grass would probably be the best one for the job there. But you do also have a weakness to psychic type Pokemon, so those psychic type Pokemon could come in. It might be a good idea to be able to Terastal into a dark type, which would then be super effective against the psychic type. Even a bug type would probably work as well to be super effective against the psychic type, but it has less usability. I guess the bug type does have a resistance to ground as well, which could potentially work in your favour, but you do need to kind of consider what would work best personally for your... Next up, we've got the Electric Psychic. The only Pokemon currently is Alolan Raichu, but there are several suggested Terastal for this typing. Your main weaknesses are going to be ground, dark, and ghost type. So to cover the ghost type, you've got dark type here. A dark type Terastal would hit that. It would also resist the dark type that's going to hit the psychic type as well, so it could work really well. Fairy obviously covers any of the dark types that decide to come in for super effective damage, so that would work also. And then you've got, for the electric side, in the ground weakness, you have got the water, you've got the grass, and you've also got the ice still again. All three of those would work in this set, but I just chose water because that's the one that I think would have the most applicability to this scenario. Next up, we have got the electric rock type. Now, the only Pokemon to do this is a Alolan Golem, which obviously is a fairly forgotten Pokemon, honestly, in my opinion. But yeah, we've got electric rock type. The main weaknesses we've got here are 4 times weakness to ground. You've got a weakness to grass and a weakness to water as well. So in terms of the weakness to ground, definitely grass and water are really good coverage here, because they will hit both the ground type weakness, and also the grass will hit the water type weakness as well, and the water will resist the water weakness. Now, grass will probably be the best Terastal because it's super effective against 2 of the weaknesses, but also is resistant to the grass. But if you want to get rid of the grass aspect as well, you've got the bug typing, which will be super effective against grass, same as the flying typing will be super effective against grass, and immune to the ground typing as well. Next up, we have got the electric steel type. Now, this typing is a fantastic typing. It's got 2 weaknesses in ground and fighting, but they are very common typings in the game. So in regards to the ground typing, you want to run ground or water typing. That would allow for that Terastal to get rid of any weaknesses that you have and become super effective against the ground type Pokemon that's likely to come in. But you could also run the Psychic or the Flying Terastal for the fighting type Pokemon. Flying would also give you the immunities to ground typing as well, so that would work very nicely in your favour. The 2 notable Pokemon that we've got here are Magnezone and also Togedemaru. Those are the electric steel Pokemon. Now, obviously, if they got Levitate, that'd be fantastic, but unfortunately, they do not. Next up, we have the electric and water typing. So, the 2 notable Pokemon here, we have Rotom Wash and also Lantern. Now, Rotom Wash does have Levitate, but we are going to pay attention to this typing without any abilities. So, with this, we have 2 weaknesses. You have ground weakness and you also have a grass weakness. Now, those 2 weaknesses can be covered by the ice types. The ice type Terastal is definitely the top tier one I would recommend. Bug typing is super effective against the grass type and also resists the ground type there as well, so works absolutely fantastic. You have got water typing that you could run, but you have to be very cautious of the grass typing then. And also the flying typing gives you an immunity to the ground typing and also super effective against the grass typing there as well. So any of those 3 work really well. If you're going offensively, definitely ice. If you're wanting more defensive, then I'd say the bug or the fly. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every single view that any of these videos get, and you know I've put so much time into this that if you made it this way, then all I can do is thank you with my heart, because you know you're what helps the channel. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. As I said, if you could interact, I'd really appreciate it. Comment down below if there are any ones that you disagree with or any ones that you would add a different Terastal typing to, and give your reasoning for it as well. And I'd really love to see that. I think that would be a really, really cool way to interact with me, and I will definitely take a look at them and I'll try and reply as much as I can. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.